Hello and welcome to the first round of the Legend of Zelda Versus series, where we'll be ranking all of the Legend of Zelda games based on a bracket. I'll have a bracket link in the description. For today's round, we're doing the preliminary games, which are basically the games that aren't as known or popular. So, for today's episode, will be shorter and a little less detailed than some of the later episodes because we'll have more different games to cover. To start off this episode, we're going to be seeing which of the two games that we'll be ranking at a time has better creativity. So we're starting off with The Adventure of Link and Four Swords. While Four Swords is a very creative game, The Adventure of Link is extremely creative and is completely different from all of the other Zelda games, which is why I'm going to give The Adventure of Link the point for this round. While Phantom Hourglass is a pretty creative game, it takes a lot of stuff from Wind Waker, including the music, the story, as well as the characters. But in the game TRIFORCE Heroes, there's a lot of creativity, including the multiplayer aspect, the costumes, as well as the story. Which is why, for this round, I'm going to have to be giving the point to TRIFORCE Heroes. The Oracle games are very similar. However, in Oracle of Seasons, you can change the different seasons, and as well as traveling to Subrosia, which gives it an edge over Oracle of Ages. The next aspect we're going to be ranking the games off of is combat. Now, in the battle between Four Swords and The Adventure of Link, the fairly obvious winner is The Adventure of Link due to all its new improvements, including the downward slash and the magic, and the whole game is basically centered around combat, which is why it gets an edge over Four Swords and gains the point again in this round. In the case of Phantom Hourglass and TRIFORCE Heroes, Phantom Hourglass has a little bit of an edge due to being able to roll and having a little bit more combat abilities. Now, Oracle of Seasons and Ages have the exact same combat system. However, the items offer a little bit of variance. And since the Oracle of Seasons has items such as the magnetic gloves, it gets the point for this round. The next aspect we'll be having a battle with is exploration. In The Adventure of Link and Four Swords, The Adventure of Link is a lot less open world than Four Swords, even though neither of them are technically open world. So I'm going to give the point to Four Swords. In TRIFORCE Heroes, it's a pretty normal 2D exploration. But in Phantom Hourglass, there's a little bit more sea exploration, which makes it feel bigger and more vast, which is why Phantom Hourglass gets the win for this round. In between Oracle of Seasons and Ages, in Oracle of Ages you can go back to the past, which allows you to have a little bit more exploration than Oracle of Seasons. The next aspect we're going to be ranking on is items. The items are a very important part of Zelda games. In the case of The Adventure of Link and Four Swords, they play an important role in both games. However, they play a more important role in Four Swords. In TRIFORCE Heroes, There are not nearly as many different item variations as there are in Phantom Hourglass, which is why Phantom Hourglass gets the win for this round. In the case of the Oracle games, the victory once again goes to Oracle of Seasons. The next area of Legend of Zelda games we're going to be talking about is enemies. Enemies are generally overlooked. In this section, we're going to be covering the overworld enemies of Legend of Zelda games. For the case of Adventure of Link and Four Swords, the Adventure of Link has an edge because of its vast enemies and different combat styles. In the case of TRIFORCE Heroes and Phantom Hourglass, the win actually goes to TRIFORCE Heroes due to its multiplayer aspect and the totem ability. Between the Oracle games, Oracle of Seasons is a little more focused on combat, so it has more enemies. The next aspect of Zelda games we're going to be having a versus on is dungeons. These are a very important part of Zelda games. In the case of the Adventure of Link and Four Swords has more normal, typical Zelda dungeons than Adventure of Link, as well as having better dungeons. In the case of TRIFORCE Heroes and Phantom Hourglass does have a repetitive dungeon, but the dungeons overall are a little bit better. Just as Oracle of Seasons is more focused on combat, Oracle of Ages is more focused on the dungeons and the puzzles, which gives it a lead over Oracle of Seasons in this area. The next aspect is characters. Characters make up a lot of the emotion of the Legend of Zelda games. In the case of Four Swords and the Adventure of Link is an NES title, which makes it a lot harder to have characters, which is how Four Swords gets a lead. One of Phantom Hourglass's best aspects is its characters, which is how Phantom Hourglass gets the point over TRIFORCE Heroes in this area. Between the two Oracle games, Oracle of Ages has a little bit more character development, which is how it gets a point in this area. The next aspect we're going to be ranking on is story. The story is very important to Zelda games. And between the Adventure of Link and Four Swords has a little better story, so it gets the point. Phantom Hourglass and TRIFORCE Heroes don't really have that much story, but TRIFORCE Heroes has a little more, which is how it gets the point in this round. The Oracle games have a combined story, but individually, Oracle of Ages has a little bit better story. The next Zelda aspect we're going to be ranking on is emotion. In the case of Four Swords and the Adventure of Link, Four Swords has a lot more emotion, which is how it gets the point. In the case of Phantom Hourglass and TRIFORCE Heroes, Phantom Hourglass has a lot more emotion than TRIFORCE Heroes, which is how it gets the point in this area. In terms of emotion, it's a pretty close battle in Oracle of Ages and Seasons, but Oracle of Ages has a little more emotion and character development, so it's going to get the point for this one again. The next area we're going to be ranking the games on is progression. Progression is how the game goes from easy at the beginning to difficult at the end. The Adventure of Link has a terrible progression, which is how Four Swords wins this. In terms of progression, TRIFORCE Heroes is actually the one that wins. So this round, the point is going to TRIFORCE Heroes. In terms of progression, the point once again goes to Oracle of Ages for its great dungeon progression. The next area is side content. In the games Four Swords and The Adventure of Link, there isn't very much side content. But in The Adventure of Link, there's pretty much completely none. So the Four Swords gets the win. TRIFORCE Heroes actually beats Phantom Hourglass again in this area because of its different costumes and great side quests. Again, this is close, but Oracle of Seasons has a little more side content than Oracle of Ages. The next area is music. In terms of music, Four Swords doesn't really have that much to offer, but the Adventure of Link has a little more. So the Adventure of Link gets the point for this area. Believe it or not, music is actually one of TRIFORCE Heroes' strong points, which is how it gets the point for this round. And between the Oracle games, Oracle of Seasons has a little bit more variety of soundtrack, so it's going to get the point for this round. The bosses are an important part of Zelda games, where you have to figure out how to kill them using different tactics. The Adventure of Link actually has some of the best bosses in the whole series, so the point will go to it. Neither of these games have particularly memorable bosses, but TRIFORCE Heroes' bosses are a little bit better than Phantom Hourglasses, so it's getting the point for this round. Oracle of Seasons actually has some of the best bosses in the series, so it will get the point for this round. The art style of a game is actually one of the most important factors, and it varies depending on the game's production. Between The Adventure of Link and Four Swords, The Adventure of Link is an NES title, so it doesn't really have an art style, which is how Four Swords pulls to the lead in this one. Phantom Hourglass and TRIFORCE Heroes actually have pretty similar art styles. However, TRIFORCE Heroes is a little bit more distinguishable, so it gets the point again for this round. Now you might be asking yourself, how can two Game Boy Color games have different art styles? And the answer is, they can't really. But Oracle of Seasons has different colors for its seasons, so it's gonna get the point. World is the next area we're gonna be ranking on. This is different from exploration, because exploration is sort of how big the world is, and the world is how creative it is. The Four Swords and The Adventure of Link. Four Swords gets the definite win in this round. Phantom Hourglass actually has one of the best worlds in the game, which is how it pulls ahead of TRIFORCE Heroes in this round. In Oracle of Ages, you can travel from the past land to the present land, which offers more variety of world, which is how it passes Oracle of Seasons and gets the point for this round. Difficulty is how hard the game gets at its hardest point. The Adventure of Link is known for being one of the hardest games ever, which is how it gets the point for this round. TRIFORCE Heroes is one of the least difficult games in the series, which is how Phantom Hourglass is a little harder, and it gets the point for this round. Oracle of Ages has more of an emphasis on puzzles than Oracle of Seasons, so it's a little bit harder than its Ages counterpart. Let me give you some advice. After you beat the adventure of Link once, you will never want to set your hands on an NES controller again. So Four Swords is definitely a better option for replaying. And in between TRIFORCE Heroes and Phantom Hourglass is a little bit more fun after you beat it to play it again, which is how it gets the point for this round and ultimately wins. And between Oracle of Seasons and Ages, Oracle of Ages is a little bit more fun to play and has a little more difficulty, so it's going to get the point for this too. So what do you think about my Zelda Versus preseason? Which matchups are you looking forward to? Today, we eliminated Oracle of Seasons, Adventure of Link, and TRIFORCE Heroes. So make sure to watch out for my next Zelda Versus video. And be sure to like and subscribe. And until then, I'll see you next time.